Frank Live. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV channel 250 and Leaf Talk. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now on Leaf Talk, joining me as usual is Aaron William Freeland and a casual guest from time to time, Eduardo Harari. So, gentlemen, I'll start with you, Aaron. Do I have to ask, or do you just want to
go? You can go ahead and ask. It might set me up better.
How are you?
Doing well. How are you?
It's we look forward to doing this show, and the biggest reason we look forward to doing this show is because the team itself is very popular. And it's fun to talk about it because it affects so many people so positively, negatively, and then the other. And you can define the other as you wish. So for me, it's not bad. How about you, Eduardo?
So, the Leafs are Toronto's team. They give us great times, sad times, and hoping times. And the hope keeps going on. That's how I would put it. We hope that next season is the season, and we keep hoping and hoping and hoping. This one had a sour note to it because of all what happened during the game, and we are going to discuss that at length. And I think, it's time for the league to start doing some meddling to see what's going on, because it's not right.
Specifically, what do you mean? With the Leafs? With
the NHL has to start looking at its own way of acting, because I believe that what happened during the game doesn't just come from one individual. It has to come from the top.
And what do you mean?
The rules come from the top. They don't come
okay.
from the
All
bottom.
right. All right. Good. Okay. No, well, look, there were 2 goals scored. Both of them included blatant penalties. If you want to call the interference call a blatant penalty. There was a holding the stick and basically the holding the stick of a defenseman, which in the Leaf zone is a problem when you're playing with one less defenseman. There were 2 goals that shouldn't have counted. Either 1 goal shouldn't have counted or 2 goals shouldn't have counted. Unfortunately, 1 goal didn't count and the other one did. And it was the difference in the game. And let's stop we can't trust, and here I'm going to start with this. We cannot trust Sportsnet and TSN to be unbiased. The reason being, and this is going to sound crazy, but the reason they can't be biased is because they can't be biased because they're part owners of the Leafs. So they have to be careful to make sure that they don't show any favoritism to the Leafs. And I've always maintained that when you're in that position, you may overcompensate. And I think Sportsnet and TSN overcompensate. They bent, and CBC for that matter, they bent over backwards to support the penalty that was called, right? During that goal, they said it was a good penalty. It was interference. It was a moving pick. All those things they said. But nobody mentioned that Jake Muzzin was basically stripped of his stick. First, he was stripped of him the opportunity to move because he had his stick. He was held up, and then he let go of his stick because there was nothing to be done with the stick because the other guy had it. And then the other guy just threw it to the ice. That goal counted, which happened seconds after. So the Leafs, at this point, if this was Major League Baseball, Aaron, we've touched on this. If this was Major League Baseball, this game would have been put on bright alert where everybody would see it. And the question would be asked, was there a penalty missed on one goal when it wasn't missed on the other? The answer without a doubt in my mind, and I don't think I'm being biased here, I think it's simple. Both goals shouldn't have counted.
Now, in a situation like that, yeah, if you're going to call one infraction, then it has to apply to the other as well. And there's no two ways about it. The other side of the coin here is Nick Paul, a guy who sounds like he should be in a boy band, had a breakout game. He has 2 career playoff goals. I'll let you guess where and when those were scored.
He also has a World Hockey Championship golden goal for Canada last year.
Yeah. He's not don't misunderstand me. I'm not trying to put down Nick in any way whatsoever. I just think it's deliciously funny how players always seem to get firsts whenever they play the Leafs.
Well, I guess what you're trying to say is that teams and players who don't play historic games tend to against the Leafs, like Zamboni drivers.
Exactly.
I think that's what Aaron's. Yeah, he said exactly. So Eduardo, you want to after what I said, after what Aaron said, is there something you want to next step?
I mean, let's be logical here, because there has to be a logic to this situation.
That's the problem. You're right.
There has to be a logic, because what we saw and what was done were totally opposites. And like I said, I don't know if there is something going on at the league level that is causing this, but if it is, it has to stop, because the game of hockey belongs to the people, doesn't belong to business, to suits.
But, Eduardo, the thing of it is, and Aaron, I say this with only love and affection for the community that we live in, Southern Ontario or Canada, depending on what kind of Leaf fan we're talking about, right? Because it's not just about Toronto, not just about Ontario. It's about Canada as well. And even when they go to the U.S., there's a lot of Canadians, willing to go, expats or whatever. Nothing against that. But what I will say, and I will continue to say this, is that unfortunately, we're nice people in Canada and we put up with this kind of stuff. If that kind of officiating, if the kind of officiating the Leafs have had this year, I was going to suggest something, and I'll do it here in this part. The Leafs have to work on something to make it past the first round. We all agree, right? They have to do something different to get to the next round. Now, we can sit here and debate for the full hour what we think are the options the Leafs must look into. I'm going to put as the primary option, the very first thing the Leafs have to work on is work on being the squeaky wheel like some other teams in the National Hockey League. In other words, when they get jobbed, they need to figure out a way to get the attention of Gary Bettman and company to make sure that they understand that everybody knows they got jobbed and they shouldn't be jobbed and they can't be jobbed. I say the Leafs have been mistreated by the league, not because of anything secret. I'm talking obvious. Obviously, earlier this year, we saw a 6-game suspension for a first-time offender of an injury that really there was no injury attached to it, just a suspension. And you know who we're talking? we're talking about the former captain of the Ottawa Senators, right? And he got a 6-game suspension on a first offense. Evidence number 1 in my book.
It baffles me how this continues to happen year after year after year, game after game. And it's a marked difference, when you look at the difference between game 5 and game 6, and then game 6 and game 7. You had the games being called very close, 1 through 5, 6 and 7. All of a sudden that completely changes. And there's no explanation for it. There's no justification for it. All of a sudden the Leafs find themselves having to play a completely different style of game than the first 5 games of the season, and it puts them at a disadvantage. I'm not saying that Tampa didn't have the opportunity as well, but they seem to be able to adapt better, and I don't know why the Leafs can't seem to do that.
The one thing that and I'll go back to what I said, my statement, there is something going on
It's
preventing the
always
Leafs from
been going on, Eduardo. It's simply because the Toronto Maple Leafs have the least to lose if they lose.
No,
They
they
have the
don't.
least to lose if they lose. In the minds of others who aren't Leaf fans and who aren't the ownership of the Maple Leafs. That is why this kind of stuff happens. Earlier, we saw TSN this year point out the fact that the Leafs, considering their goal scoring prowess, their ability to score, they were way down the totem pole when it came to getting penalties compared to other teams of their ilk, of their scoring ability. We saw that on TSN. So there is something going on, Eduardo. It's the greasy wheel. It's the squeaky wheel looking for the grease.
It comes down to one simple fact, Frank. Is
Okay,
what is
what's
going
the
to attract more to the hockey audience in the U.S. And that's what it comes down to.
Absolutely.
Revenues of the league. If a Canadian team doesn't, if you have a US championship, it benefits more for the big networks, and that has to stop.
Well,
We have
money's
to
not money.
remember. We have to remember that the lead teams that created this league weren't American, because the game wasn't played as much as it was played in Canada. So let's give a little bit of
That's
respect.
not really true, though, Eduardo. Even when the team was only 6, even when the league was only 6 teams, it was 4 Americans and 2 Canadian teams. So it's always been a league, more American participants in it. Now, I know what you're talking about. If you're talking about playing the game of hockey and percentage of capita loving the game of hockey, yeah, you're right. Canada outstrips the U.S., but I got to say, it's growing in the U.S.
But it will never be at the levels that is in Canada.
Agreed. But here's the thing, Eduardo. But here's to your point, to take your point on, write it up like straight on. The thing is, as you know, you're a businessman, right? You're a businessman. What you're looking for is an opportunity for new revenue streams. In Canada, for example, I'll use the Canadian Football League as an example. In Saskatchewan, there's not much growth in the Canadian Football League there. They've got 1 million people in the province, and 800,000 of them love the Saskatchewan Roughriders. They're at 80% probably, or 90% of who love the Saskatchewan Roughriders. And I'll probably get calls from friends from Saskatchewan say it's closer to 99. But and I wouldn't argue that point. You're right, Eduardo, but the motivation is that there's revenue streams. Well, here's the real reason why the Arizona Coyotes have not left Arizona. I think they're the 4th largest TV population of the television, that their network that they have there's a 4th largest in the U.S., if I'm not mistaken. They don't want to leave there because there's a lot of prospective fans and prospective business there. The National Hockey League under Gary Bettman is all about making more money. You cannot convince the owners in the Canadian Football League, in the National Hockey League, the NFL, Major League Baseball. They're not going to turn their back on more money. Money's the motivation. Let's be real. You're right, Eduardo. You're 100% right.
But, and Aaron, you will back me up on this, because you like numbers. You look at numbers for everything. So you brought the point of the wonderful team from Arizona, from Phoenix. Have you guys looked at the numbers of fans that compose that team, majority of season ticket holders?
No, I haven't seen that.
I was looking at it. I was looking at major franchises of hockey,
Mm-hmm.
and the composition of where they are getting their revenues from. Looking at the geographical figures.
Okay.
In the U.S. and particularly in Arizona, the Arizona Coyotes, 60% of their fan base is Canadian.
Well, that wouldn't be hard to believe when you consider how many fans show up at the game. And I can tell you another thing, that Rod Peterson and company, Saskatchewan adopted the Arizona Coyotes as their own. They have an annual trip to Arizona to watch the team play. You're right that, again, Canadians tend to support hockey everywhere, and that means even the United States. So you guys have heard me talk about Buffalo's existence doesn't happen if it isn't near Southern Ontario.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. Canadians tend to travel more for sports than anywhere else in the world, mainly because it's cheaper to go everywhere else in the world
Yeah,
for our sports than to
absolutely.
stay at home to watch it. So,
Yeah, and the National Hockey League has been unfair to Canada historically. That's just the way they are. They're just historically unfair to Canada. The Southern Ontario market is no smaller than the Alberta market. That's a tongue-in-cheek comment right now. And in Alberta, they have 2 teams. In Ontario, we have 1.5. Because I don't count Ottawa as an Ontario team. It is both Quebec. It's shared with Quebec and Ontario, Ottawa being what it is, right? But the Southern Ontario market is bigger than anything. They could support a second team in Southern Ontario, and they haven't put it here because of Buffalo, and they say it's because of Toronto. Still, serving hockey fans who deserve the service of basically hockey, which it is, right? We don't have a second team here in Southern Ontario. We should have had one a long time ago. We deserved one just as soon as New York got a second, as LA got a second. Toronto is populated enough. Sports market, as far as the sports market is concerned, they handle it as well as anybody. When it comes to hockey, there's no other area that could support a second team more than Toronto. And there's no other area that deserves a team before any other area in North America, in my opinion. And that's part of the problem with the Leafs as well. They have all the pressure to win. New York, I've said this before, and I'm sorry if it sounds like droning. The New York Rangers did not win a Stanley Cup until the New York Islanders won all theirs. The Los Angeles Kings did not win a Stanley Cup until the Anaheim Mighty Ducks won their Stanley Cup. Is there a trend there, gentlemen?
well, that was, I think, one of the other concerns the Toronto Maple Leafs could potentially have had with putting a new team in here is what if that other Toronto team wins a cup before the Maple Leafs win another cup? And what if we have a Vegas Golden Knights situation where the Markham team comes in and all of a sudden the Markham Moose, for example, end up winning the Stanley Cup before the Toronto Maple Leafs win their next one? How does that reflect on the Maple Leafs organization versus this new upstart organization just north of Toronto?
You make the point elegantly there. What you're saying, if I can put my spin on what you just said.
Sure.
How dare someone else win a cup before we do? We would rather not have another team in town because we can't have another team win before we do. Let me see. That's kind of selfish, and that's not very community oriented. That's rule number 1 of selfishness, and that is probably one of the biggest motivators.
It's free market capitalism at its very best. The Toronto Maple Leafs and NHL hockey, especially in a city as big as Toronto with 2.5 million people, is a very limited commodity. It is supply and demand. By choking off the supply of decent professional hockey, they're increasing the demand for tickets and thus lining their pockets. This is, it's free market capitalism at its very best. You are never going to see another team in the GTA Golden Horseshoe area as long as the Maple Leafs continue to exist in the city of Toronto. It's just the way that everything has been set up. It's not going to happen, unfortunately, which means that us long-suffering Toronto Maple Leafs fans will continue to languish and, put up with those Pinterest-worthy jokes of, hey, What do the Leafs and the Titanic have in common? They're both great until they hit the ice. Ah ha ha! Hey, they've sucked since 1967. Oh ho ho ho! You know, it is what it is.
That's not true, though. That's not true, Aaron. The Leafs have not sucked.
No, I know. I'm talking about the jokes that people make.
Legacy teams in this city that had a better chance of winning than most American teams. And that's why I keep saying there is something there to the equation that doesn't add up. Is it the league that doesn't want the win because it's not beneficial to them? Or is it that and everyone complained about Ballard that we never won under him. We haven't won under anybody else either.
No.
So
yeah, but with Ballard, it was an embarrassment, humiliation, and degradation. I mean, he took the team. He ran the team through the sewer. I mean, the stuff that he did. You know, that's the other thing. You know, the fact that he was able, a criminal, to maintain ownership of the Toronto Maple Leafs in partnership with a very important bank and a very important union. He was able to survive ownership when imagine someone like that maintaining ownership of the Toronto Maple Leafs or any other sports franchise today.
I can't imagine something like that, you know.
Frank, what have the Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment done differently?
Eduardo, look. Let's be clear about something, and I want to make this clear, Eduardo. If it's not for some questionable officiating, which I use data to support my thinking, and this is just an opinion. I'm not here to talk about conspiracies. This is not about I'm telling you there's a conspiracy. I'm just asking questions. The question I'm asking is, why does Spezza get a 6-game suspension under the circumstances that he found himself and who he was and what he was as far as a player in the National Hockey League, what kind of standing he had in the National Hockey League? He was in good standing. He got 6 games. We saw the Leafs play in this playoff series. We saw them in a 2-1 game lose a goal because of what the people that represent us, Canada, Canadian hockey fans, defend and be apologists for the American control of the game. If there was any kind of Canadian loyalty, never mind loyalty, if there was equity, if TSN, Sportsnet, and CBC cared about Canada as much as they did about the National Hockey League, in other words, equally, they would have mentioned that the Leafs had a goal scored against them while there was a penalty. And they used those exact words. If you were watching or listening, well, you shouldn't count a goal when there's a penalty. They couldn't do that. They couldn't let that happen. They couldn't allow a goal to be scored while there was a penalty. Well, Jake Muzzin was stripped of his stick seconds before the puck entered the net, and nobody at TSN and Sportsnet mentioned that. That's why I say it's not a conspiracy. It's cowardice. It's simple cowardice by TSN, Sportsnet, and CBC really doesn't deserve any credit because they don't really produce it anymore. But it's cowardice to tell the truth. The truth is there were 2 goals that were scored while there were altercations, but only 1 didn't count. That's my point, and that's my evidence. Spezza, and if you really want to go further, I got longer list of stuff where inconsistency always seems to rear its head against the Maple Leafs, which is not, I'm not going to say it's intentional, but it's just because Toronto doesn't say stop bullying me. That's the next step. Again, I repeat that Dubas and Shanahan have to do, and even Larry has to do it too, where they have to say our fans are going to start, putting it 2 and 2 together. Because it's happening in a lot of frequency. So the Spezza situation, this game, did not happen far apart. They're in the same season, and they're big, big, big red flags on how the Leafs are penalized. And the TSN thing, making 3.
And I agree with you with regards to TSN and Sportsnet. But at the end of the day, we are media. At the end of the day, what are they going to listen to us? They never do anyways. But where I am suspect, and where I put my if the league management doesn't stand up and say we are playing this series under protest for all what's going on,
there has to be that opportunity. You're right. Aaron, he's right, because even the NBA, that was known to penalize based on which team should win. They penalize based on, well, let's see. Well, LA should win, so they're supposed to win, so we can't call penalties against them. They had that reputation where they, help the stars, if you will. That's now ended. You've mentioned it a couple of times where the officiating is questioned after the game. The National Hockey League is run by a guy who came from the NBA. And I've said this before, and I'll stand behind it. Gary Bettman's running the National Hockey League, officiating the way the NBA used to handle their officiating. They don't do that anymore. They finally realized that, hey, they got to stop with the inconsistency. They need to allow themselves to be accommodating to ensuring that what they're doing is right. They need to have, to be basically double checked on when whatever they do, right? They have to be accountable for what they say and what they do. That game has to have some accountability. They have to come out and explain why the penalty that should have happened against Muzzin didn't, and why the goal counted in that case, just like the same way when there's an offside, right? It doesn't matter when the offside happened. They can't score a goal after being offside. Why is that?
Because it's a breaking the rules, right?
And it's wrong, right? And you can't have a goal scored when there's like you using your words, a break of the rules.
And the problem that we've got here is Toronto management is too afraid to break the rules because they're afraid of the specter of Big Bad Gary Bettman and the potential for the league to do something to damage the Toronto Maple Leafs. That's one part of it. The second part of it, though, is hopefully we will see something done because people are betting money on these games.
Absolutely. That's where it's going to.
Once you get organizations like that involved, they want everything to be as on the up and up as humanly possible, so they have the potential to make more money. If people know that it's skewed in a certain direction, they're going to bet that way. That affects odds. That influences all sorts of people who potentially could have a vested interest. And it's a great league that you've got there. It'd be a shame if something happened to it.
We're back at that 5-letter word.
Yep.
The thing also, and I hate to say it because Mr. Tenenbaum is a good friend, but I hate to say it. This league is run by a dynasty of above age, I am going to say old, above age individuals that and starting with the commissioner. The commissioner should not be running this league. The league has to get modern. And modern doesn't mean standing in the old standards. It means getting ahead of the game and letting the people that are the personalities of the game do what they know how to do best. Play the goddamn game of hockey. I'm sorry for the word, but that's the truth. We are not letting hockey players play the game the way they used to play.
See, I get what you're saying, and I want people, from my perspective, and I know this of you, Aaron, and I know this of you, Eduardo. Nobody here is accusing the National Hockey League of doing anything. I don't think it's intentional. I'll for me, it's about the path of least resistance. And my problem with the Toronto Maple Leafs, MLSE, TSN, Sportsnet, Larry Tannenbaum, run down the list. These are decent human beings, decent companies that don't want to be naughty. don't want to be perceived as, anti-community, anti-standards type companies. They hire decent people like Shanahan, a wonderful guy, a great human being, a great hockey player, an honest hockey player. He hires a general manager, a new age kid, right? Who has the new thinking when it comes to players. He's a players guy. He's a decent human being. He has an understanding about gay rights. He understands about violence against women. He understands about sexual predators and how they all must be treated, because he is young enough to know what today's standards are. To speak what you were talking about, Eduardo, I'm sort of leaping off where you are. The problem is, as a organization that is out to win a Stanley Cup, they're pussies. That's the problem. That's all the problem is. You got to be tougher. It took them forever to realize they need to be a little tougher, and that's the problem. They just, and I'm sorry I use that word because I'm old. That word means something to me, which it wouldn't mean to people today. They just don't have the backbone to stand up and demand that they be treated, wait for it, better than the other teams. Whereas they seem to only want, well, let's see, we don't want to be the worst treated team. Well, they've got to exercise their power if they want to win. So 1970s word I used, I apologize for the people I offended by using that word. My intent is only to basically express the fact that there's a bit of cowardice in the National Hockey League when it comes to certain teams and certain owners, and the Leafs, for the sake of finance, want to be nice. Well, you can't win the Stanley Cup being nice. You just can't. You can try, as you will, but what's going to happen is you're going to be up against somebody who's only interested in winning and living the words, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. Have you ever heard that before, Aaron?
Oh, I've heard that a lot. And it's very frustrating when I hear that too. Just a quick thought here, bear with me. There are legacy families in the NHL. Guys, groups like the Wirtz family, to go into other leagues, for an example of the kind of calcified ownership that there is, think Roger Sterling of the Clippers, right? If you are old enough to be drawing a pension, you should not be running a team in this league. Own it? Sure. We'll take your money. You're already retired. I don't have a problem with that. But you should not be able to influence that. And once you get to retirement age, at the age of whatever he is, Lou Lamoriello should not be having control of the New York Islanders as a general manager.
Well,
right?
You can't be. Yeah, you're talking about ageism now, and that's.
Well, no, I understand that, but in order for this league to progress, there has to be.
I'm not disagreeing with you. Don't get me wrong.
You gotta
like
look at this realistically.
I used the word I shouldn't have used, but my intent wasn't to do anything like that, and you're not intending to be an ageist. I know that.
No,
but what you're talking about is, at some point, somebody new needs to come in. There needs to be change, I guess. You have to start bringing in new blood, is what you're saying. You're not saying get rid of old people, but bring in younger people.
You can't just shuffle the deck chairs on the Titanic and hope to get a different result. That's basically what I'm saying. It's the same 40 people that get coaching jobs over and over again. It's the same 40 people that get general managers jobs over and over again.
That's not totally true, but I'm taking you at your point. I'm not going to take you verbatim, okay, Aaron, because I'll disagree with you verbatim, word for word, just like you had a right to disagree with me word for word with what I said. But the theme that you're talking about is there needs to be progress, and progress sometimes requires new thinking, new ideas, new people.
So
that's how I'm taking it. So I don't want anybody. That's how I'm taking.
So I'll take it a little bit farther out. First, I want to speak about a different league that is trying to get better, and that's the MLB. But when you have someone that doesn't understand technology, and you are trying to do the right thing, you sometimes make mistakes. Apple TV in baseball doesn't work. And many people have complained about it because Friday night games cannot be seen anywhere else but on Apple TV, which the majority of the people don't have. Now, I am going to take and I am going to take Aaron's point on not attacking age, but exemplifying Canadian businesses and Canadian entrepreneurs that are making it better in industry. Let's take it away from the game of hockey. Let's take it away from the sports in general. Why are companies in telecommunications like AT&T and Virgin doing better than Bell Canada is? Because the hierarchy in Bell Canada at the board level, okay, their CEOs, all their C-level and VPs are all above 70. How can you guide a company, a technology company, a big giant like Bell Canada, when the people that don't understand how to log into a computer?
Are you upset with them still using rotary phones in the head office, or?
Oh,
Just
it goes
kidding.
beyond that.
I was just kidding.
No. You know that there is a telegraph machine inside the Montreal office of Bell Canada that they are still being used. They're still being used.
Wow, that's so that we don't offend people. And I, again, I want to apologize for the word that I used. I had a cat, and her name was Kiki, and she was a lot tougher than than the dog we had. So maybe I'm using the wrong word. Maybe I should have said they're being puppies. I don't know. But you're right, Eduardo, that we're all right, that one of the biggest things that people want to push is, and it's hard for me to say this. I'm the oldest guy here, and I feel like maybe I should resign and stop doing this. So at some point, I think in what you guys are saying, you're wrong in the sense that here's where I'm going to disagree with you and make my point. The question is productivity. The question is what you're able to accomplish. Up until this year, to use the example that Aaron gave, Lou Lamoriello was doing a bang-up job with the New York Islanders. It all blew up this year, after signing all his major players, bringing in an old wily veteran, Chara. It didn't work out for him. They started their season on the road, too many games in the road. They played, I think, the first 20 or so on the road because the arena that they were going to play in wasn't quite ready. And so, they got behind the 8 ball in a pretty tough, and I think, guys, I think, to be fair to the Islanders, they really got unlucky that the conference that they were in was so good. The pressure to make the playoffs in the Eastern Conference of the National Hockey League this year, the standings show it all. Simply put, the Edmonton Oilers would have been a road team anywhere in this conference. And if we had lined up the top 16 teams in the playoffs, right? And the Islanders would have made the playoffs. If we would have lined up the 16 teams, Edmonton wouldn't have had a home game. But good fortune is, that they did. But to the point, though, is that sometimes you can't create luck. You have to kind of, you can't find luck. I'm sorry, you have to create it. And Lou Lamoriello didn't get any luck this year. All bad luck for him, injuries. I'm going to defend the other old guy. What can I say, Aaron?
Hey, you know what? I understand that perfectly. The difference is you're not steering a team or a league that needs to get younger. You're not making policy decisions for a league that needs to get younger. And you're also still very productive, as opposed to being locked into your ways. You've embraced new technology. Did you know Lou Lamoriello apparently thinks he has a secret phone line? When he worked with the Maple Leafs, they convinced him that his phone line was secured because they plugged a red phone cord into the back of it. So for his phone, they just changed the color and said it's a secure landline, Mr. Lamorello, and he believed it. So,
well, I appreciate you suggesting that I still am productive. I'm glad to hear it because anyway, Eduardo, let's get off this part and let's get on to the part where the players on the team. Can we at least agree that knowing what Tampa is, right? Who Tampa are, the quality of team that they are. I know this is, cheap. I know I'm in a very cheap way making everybody. I'm trying to make everybody feel better. The Leafs lost to a pretty good team. Should they have lost against them? I think we can agree a pretty good team, but they shouldn't have lost against them. They lost the game because of the same problems they've had for the past 6 years. They get a series under control or put themselves in a position where it's an either or, a real 50-50 shot, right? But they can't seem to make a 50-50 shot work for them. They haven't been able to make a 60-40 shot work for them. And once again, they couldn't make a 60-40 shot work for them again because they were ahead 3-2. So, they had they had a 60% chance to the 40% chance that Tampa had, and Tampa made hay with that 40%.
Yeah, but okay, and now I'll talk hockey because
That was my point.
because I don't believe Tampa was the better team here. I
Well, I
don't
didn't say that, Eduardo.
I
In
don't
fact,
believe
that's
Tampa.
exactly what I said.
I believe that there were, and here we go again with what I said all along during the playoffs. I said I asked Mr. Wonderful coach to don't switch the lines that win. And what did he do again? He changed the lines that win. He gets a win under his belt and he says, "Oh, that seems to be working well. Let's see how it works if I don't put them together." And then we lose. And then he goes back to the drawing board and says, "Oh, let me go back to that line that did work." And they win that game. And he again decides that no, I must have made a mistake. It wasn't working well. So we lose again. And we went back and forth in that rotation. But that's a tradition with the Maple Leafs. For some odd reason, every time that something works, they don't like. And it's not the players, it's the coaches.
Okay, Aaron, what do you tell us, Coach Keefe? You've been very close to following him since his AHL days. I know you're a big admirer of his.
there are players that he really likes, and there's players that he's not as fond of. He does like to put his lines in a blender when he occasionally feels that the team needs a bump, and it does happen a lot. It's puzzling to me that he seemed to continue to want to tinker and tinker and tinker, almost as if he could find the perfect combination just by turning the screw an extra quarter of a turn, but it didn't quite work. Like
after the screw's tight.
Exactly. Like you've got a perfectly tuned instrument, and then you tweak it just a little bit, and you get that discordance between the two notes when you play
I'm
them.
a construction guy. Keep turning the screw until it snaps.
Yeah, and there you go. And I don't know if he managed to turn the screw until it snaps or until they loosened it off so they could no longer make any connections, because their inability to score a goal is kind of indicative of something went too far the other way.
The lessons that I think Keith should pick up, personally, this is how I see it. I think Keith needs to be better at messaging through the media, and not necessarily. I'm not saying that he's got to say something to a media guy in the corner and then that guy's got to say something. I'm talking about his pressers. I found his pressers to be very flaccid, not motivating. He's not a guy who seemed to, and that doesn't mean he can't be. I want to make that clear. He isn't a guy. We saw Cooper do what I'm talking about. We saw a coach that said, okay, we're not practicing today because I need you to be sharp tonight. It worked. We saw a coach that said, I think our team is better than they're playing. That team isn't as good as they look. We're making them look good. I know he's taking a chance on insulting the Maple Leafs and motivating them, but I'm looking at it from the perspective of him and his players, right? I see a coach in Cooper that outcoached. He did outcoach Keefe. There's no doubt about it. When you see a series start with a Leaf team's penalty killing that was killing Tampa, when you see a power play the Leafs had that was killing Tampa, and then the team came back, he made adjustments and turned things around. Now, Keefe was able to make some adjustments as well, but he did not make adjustments in the last two games. We saw replication. The two games were basically the same. Leafs coming from behind, getting tied, and unable to put the Tampa team away. And essentially, that to me is coaching, and that's something that Keefe can learn. The biggest problem the Leafs have, gentlemen, we talked about the coach, now the general manager, and we talk about both general managers, is the same problem. I want to do a segue. Inexperienced at the position, or not very experienced, neither Dubas nor Keefe. Whereas you have on the other side, right, you have someone who hasn't had his hands on the till that much. The biggest move before the playoffs was Nick Paul. That's what it looks like to me right now. Of all the players that changed locations, he proved that he could do what he did in the World Championships last year, and that is score the big goals. He did that here. So again, this is only based on what we saw in those two games. It's not based on long term. But for now, Nick Paul's the best move, better move than anything the Leafs did, because nobody that they picked up looked as impactful as Paul. Not on defense and not in forward. None of the guys they picked up had any kind of impact in game 6 or 7.
And you said he got out coached. I don't think he got out coached. Cooper just let him kill himself.
Well, that he still deserves credit for that, Eduardo. I mean,
he just let Keith kill himself by himself. He said, I am going to do what I keep doing, and let the other guy see how he can defend against it. And Keith wasn't able to come up with a strategy that actually paid off.
But Eduardo, like I always want to make sure that I temper what we say, and I need to temper myself because I'm a very passionate person. And so, what we're talking about here, and I hope this is fair. When we're talking about the difference between Coach Cooper and Coach Keefe, we're talking millimeters. But unfortunately, a millimeter can make a lot of difference. If I'm making my point, this is not time to fire Keefe, not time to fire Dubas.
But this is
they've gotten to a point. Those two men have gotten to a point who are I think, on a path. What is it the kids say today? Trending towards a first round win. They are trending towards that. Is this team trending towards that?
We've been saying that since the 80s. That we are trending towards.
Okay, let's not blame those two guys on what happened in the 80s. There's a whole group of people we can toss under the bus for that one. But let's stay on point though, Eduardo. Let's talk about this team and next year.
I'll give Keith 1 month into the season in 2022-23 for him to get fired. That's how far it's going to get.
Wow. Well,
Because
stranger
because
things have happened.
because if you think about what happened with our wonderful previous coach, it took a month and a half for him to get fired after the 2 losses in the playoffs. Keith had the same outlook. He's gone 3 times now to the playoffs, and where is the result? So I give him a month and a half into this coming season for the Leafs to take a decision, because Dubas is not going to get fired. So the scapegoat happens always to be the coach.
Yeah. Aaron, the head coach of the New York Islanders, was hired by the Islanders after winning the Stanley Cup in Washington. Coaches lose the room. I mean, Keith could next year lose the room. I mean, Eduardo's point can't be ignored. I mean, it's not guaranteed either, but it can't be ignored.
Well, the other thing that you have to consider as well is John Cooper currently has 21 years worth of coaching experience as compared to Keith's 16 years worth of coaching experience. The difference also is Cooper spent the past 10 years at the head of the Tampa Bay Lightning. Sheldon Keefe has spent a grand total of 2 full seasons with the Toronto Maple Leafs right now. He's also coincidentally one of the winningest coaches percentage-wise in Maple Leafs history.
Right.
He has the highest winning percentage of any coach. If you're only going to give him a month into the next season, Eduardo, or you only think he's going to last a month into the next season, that would be incredibly short-sighted on the part of the Maple Leafs if they were to decide to just let him go. I can understand it because they've given him a dynamite team to work with, and they've given him as much as they possibly can to try to get ahead and to get into the next round. I just think it's short-sighted for them to pull the plug.
Yeah, but the Maple Leafs have a very, very short sight. It's a part of life.
Aaron, I think to Eduardo's point, how I'll support Eduardo's point is by saying companies, people, organizations can blink.
Yep.
Right?
No,
they can
certainly
blink.
can.
So, and that's when something like that happens, right? It happens under that sphere, right? That umbrella of thinking where, I don't want to be here anymore. I want to have change. But, I've been very hard on Dubas. I've never really been hard on Keefe, mostly because he new coach. This is the first year that he's had the team in the playoffs with people in the stands. There's a lot of firsts for that guy, so, it's kind of hard. But to Eduardo's point, I mean, Eduardo, I don't disagree at all that it's possible. As I say, it doesn't take much to blink. And some of the worst stuff that happens when you blink, because that moment of darkness can lead to a real silly mistake. But I don't see it happening either. I agree with Aaron that Keefe is good for at least December. I'm not, it would take the team. For me to agree with you, Eduardo, it would have to be a situation where the team is clearly not going to make the playoffs. That would be, to me, Aaron, that would be a deal breaker there for the coach.
No, I think you may be right.
And if the coach doesn't get fired, then all bets are off, right? Because it's the old, if you don't fire him, I'll fire you thing that might happen, right? Because this organization right now has created, to its own detriment, very high hopes and a very strong belief by its fan base, its ownership, the media that is partners with the team and the organization, that they can't afford to have that hope disappear. And by disappear, I mean not making the playoffs in December, having that figured out that they might not make the playoffs. So that's when the blink might happen, right?
It's a possibility.
But it's unfortunately, it's the cap era. There cannot be monstrous changes made. It's a slow process, and that has to be, like, for example, the Montreal Canadiens made it to the Stanley Cup final last year. They this year didn't make the playoffs and were the worst team in the league. They're drafting first overall. Next year, they could make it to the Stanley Cup final again with a young, really good rookie, a responsible rookie, and right. So, things change quickly.
They certainly do. All right, gentlemen, I do need to get going. I have a hockey game to prepare for myself, and we're running a little overtime, so I still need to eat. So I am going to take off. If you gentlemen want to continue talking, I will catch you again on Wednesday.
We're done, I think.
Okay.
Last word on you, Eduardo. You got a second?
I spoke my piece.
Okay, thank you, Aaron William Freeland. Thank you, Eduardo Harari. This has been Leaf Talk. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For Candid, Frank Live, Leaf Talk, and other news, entertainment, and sports programming we offer, please check out SpanglishWorld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Ciao for now.